Here we are at part 12 of our stroll through the Bible verse by verse. We're at Genesis chapter 9. Noah and his blessed family have survived the flood. At the end of chapter 8, Noah sacrificed half the animals that he had saved, just so that God could smell them with his non-existent nostrils. But which animals did Noah burn for God's pleasure? The clean animals, the same clean animals which he took on the ark in sevens rather than pairs. Except, of course, that Noah had no idea about clean and unclean animals. For Noah, all animals were off the menu. Prior to the flood, no animals were eaten. They were simply to be burnt regularly to satisfy God's bloodlust. And after the flood? Well, all animals are on the menu. We will have to wait for Moses to get the divine dictation detailing what is a clean animal and what is unclean. An inconsistency there, do you think? Now, the flood is more than just a flood. It is very much a renewal process. During creation week, God had separated the waters above from the waters below. During the flood, he rejoins these waters, rain from above and the fountains of the deep from below, and reintroduces chaos to the world. God is wiping the slate clean and starting again. There are further hints of this. Back in chapter 5, verse 29, we have Noah's birth announced. He is the one who will toil in the earth because God has cursed the ground. This is an echo of Adam's having to toil against thorns and thistles following God's cursing the ground and his ejection from Eden. Noah is being introduced here as the new Adam. If this is not enough evidence, we will soon have the motif of nakedness and shame repeated. In Eden, Adam and Eve uncovered their own nakedness by eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge. In chapter 9, we have Noah eating, or drinking, the fruit of the vine. This causes his nakedness to be uncovered by Ham. As a result of this, Canaan is cursed by Noah, just as in Genesis 4, Cain is cursed by God. Of course, Cain was cursed for spilling blood, and in chapter 9 we see God telling Noah that blood is sacred and not to be spilt. I hope you'll see what I see here, that the flood is very much God's second attempt. Of course, this again will fail almost immediately when we get to the Tower of Babel, but I'm getting ahead of myself.
Chapter 9. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful, and multiply, and replenish the earth.
Just as he did with Adam and Eve, God tells Noah and family to be fruitful and multiply. One more creation echo. But do bear in mind that Noah is at least 600 years old at the end of the flood, and his sons and their wives are all around 100 years old. So how much fruitfulness could really be expected is open to question.
And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. Even as the green herb have I given you all things.
So now humans can eat anything that lives. Nothing is unclean. God is not being inconsistent here. He isn't going to change his mind later. He is not contradicting himself, having differentiated between clean and unclean beasts during the flood. God makes the rules and he is unchanging. So you must be reading it wrong, or out of context, or not trying hard enough to believe. The Bible literalists will have us believe that up to this point humans had been eating nothing but fruit and veg, with no explanation as to why. We were all herbivores, which means that for 1500 years God had been demanding burnt sacrifices just because he liked the smell of burning flesh. Tens of thousands of animals had been slaughtered simply to satisfy God's bloodlust, and man, supposedly created in God's image, had to stand by the altar, drooling like a well-trained dog whilst the tender meat slowly burnt to a crisp, utterly wasted. Noah had just had to burn half of the animals he carried on the ark, fed, watered, and mucked out for a year, all as a thank you to God for killing every living thing on the planet. And only then does God decide to tell Noah that now he, Noah, can eat meat.
But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man. At the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man.
But don't eat the blood. God then implements capital punishment for murder. He obviously left this one out until now so that he could get away with drowning 20 million people in the flood without any repercussions.
And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you, and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl, of the cattle, and of every beast of the earth with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall any more be a flood to destroy the earth.
God now makes his covenant with Noah, but not just with Noah and his family, but also with every single creature that was on the ark, which according to the creationists means every single creature that ever there was. So there will be no more floods to kill everything. This isn't much of a promise, is it? God has a lot of weapons in his arsenal, and by creationist thinking, he will allow 99.99% of all species that ever lived to die out between coming off the ark and humans starting to document the world in detail less than 2,000 years later. He also mentioned at the end of chapter 8,
"While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease."
which kind of causes problems for Ken Ham and the creationists who tell us there was a 1,000-year ice age immediately after the flood, which resulted in the evolution and immediate extinction of all the woolly elephants. And also in the real world, where we have a history of famines caused by overly wet and overly dry summers and years without summers. But we can't expect God to know everything, can we?
And God said, "This is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth."
So God makes a covenant with man. In the real world of symbolism, this is God hanging up his war bow and saying, look, sorry about that genocide thing, but it had to be done because men are wicked. But men are always going to be wicked, and omniscient me knows this to be a fact, so it was a pointless genocide, really. But I'm hanging up my bow now, and there will be no more worldwide genocides. I'm just going to wait for you all to die so that I can burn your skin off every day, allowing it to grow back to be burnt off again and again for all eternity. In the Narnia land of the Bible literalist, a bow in the sky must be a literal rainbow, and that must mean this is the first time it has ever rained. The Bible literalist does not explain how all the rivers flowed or all the plants growed for 1,500 years without any hydrological cycle, though I suspect their answer probably rhymes with God.
And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine, and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent.
Now, Noah drinks some wine. Well, not just like that, of course. I looked this up. My life is like that. It takes 3 years under good conditions for a freshly planted vine to produce grapes worth a damn. Under good conditions. Now, planting vines in the salt, sulphur, and decomposing corpse-laden gludge that is the aftermath of a global flood is another matter. But glossing over that, Noah's priority was to get pissed. And this was the only person God could find worth saving from the flood? Some omniscience there. But let's be fair to Noah. After what his loving God had just put him through, who can blame him? God might have let him bring his 3 sons and their wives on board the ark. But what about the rest of the relatives and his wife's and sons' wives' families that they had to leave behind to drown? I'd have wanted a drink, and having to wait 3 years for the pub to open would likely only increase my thirst. Now, although Noah's 3 centenarian sons had been told to get jiggy and repopulate the earth, they decided for some reason to hang out at Dad's for however many years it took Noah to get his brewery up and running. And so Noah got pissed and fell asleep in his tent. Apparently his wife was not there to cover him up. Perhaps the Bible writers get so used to not mentioning women that they forget they're even around.
And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness.
Ham, that is 100-year-old Ham, sees his father naked, and 100-year-old Ham tells his 2 100-year-old brothers that he has seen his father naked. So his 2 100-year-old brothers do this absurd backwards shuffle dance into Dad's tent and drop a towel over him, rather than just calling out, "Mom, Dad's pissed again," and waving his tackle about.
And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren.
So Noah woke up and he knew that Ham had seen him naked. How would he know that then? And Noah then curses not Ham, but Ham's son Canaan, because Ham had seen him naked. Canaan was born after the flood. He's going to be about 2 years old at most. And Granddaddy Noah damns the evil shit for what? There is some absurd crap in the Bible, but this is a gem. The only people on earth are the 8 who were in close confines on the ark and any sproglets they had produced since the flood. So any idea that Ham went gossiping in the streets about what he had seen is absurd. There were no streets and no one to gossip to. So what did happen in that tent between 600-year-old Noah and 100-year-old Ham to cause God's chosen perfect man to get so miffed? Of course, something else is going on here, and there are various suggestions about what that might have been. We could look for parallels in Greek, Egyptian and Mesopotamian mythology, which would all suggest that this was a castration story. But whatever it was has been redacted from the true and accurate scripture, and so it must remain conjecture. We do know as fact that this is the story which was used historically to excuse African slavery. Ham becomes the father of the Hamites, Egyptians and Africans. This little piece of mythology was used by those who defended the African slave trade.
Your far-distant ancestor once saw a man's willy, so I'm going to work you to death in my cotton fields,
is the gist of the argument. To the deluded, anything can be made to make sense. The damning of 2-year-old Canaan for absolutely no reason whatsoever is used elsewhere within the Bible to excuse the subjugation of the Canaanites by Israel. And I suspect that this is the real reason for this absurd and heavily edited myth being left in place. And of course God had no problem with supporting Noah's damnation of a toddler and his descendants in perpetuity for something that only occurred because he, Noah, had got pissed. The Lord God is fair and just at all times. So a quick review of the first 9 chapters. God starts the whole shebang with Adam and Eve. They fail, as God always knew they would. Cain gets upset when God snubs him, as God always knew he would. Cain kills Abel, as God always knew he would. But objectively this is not yet a capital crime because God has not yet made it one. God curses Cain in some way and also protects him from any retribution. God then lets the other gods down from heaven to rape the dirt girls and cause mayhem on earth, as God always knew they would. God then kills every living thing on the earth because of the actions of the other gods which he allowed onto the earth, just as God always knew he would. And we are now back on the starting blocks with 6 centenarians, one of whom is a deviant, and 2 sexcentenarians, one of whom is an alcoholic, as God always knew they were. What could possibly go wrong from here? Well, of course, God already knows the answer to that. And that's the end of chapter 9. If you enjoyed this, please thumbs up, please share, tell the world, and thanks as always for watching.